Hey, what's going on, guys? Daniel here, and while I've seen a lot of YouTubers do this the last couple years, so meet Kevin, I'm challenging you to a boxing match, and the winner will face Logan Paul. Nah, I'm just kidding. Let's cue that intro. Hey, what's going on, guys? Daniel here, one half of the Clock Brothers, and in this video, I'm going to be responding and kind of adding my own thoughts to a video that MeetKevin released last week. Now, guys, I, like many of you, are fans of MeetKevin. I think he's just done a tremendous job over the last 12 months putting videos out on stuff like the stimulus, what's happening with the housing market, real estate market, stocks, and honestly, the guy probably just doesn't even sleep. I'm convinced at this point that he is indeed a vampire. He puts out like 3-4 videos a day, and honestly, that's how much we post in a week. So I tip my hat off to you, Mr. MeetKevin. You've done a tremendous job. Now, having said that, there are some things that he made in this video, and for those of you guys that don't know what I'm talking about, he made a video about the housing market and his 4 reasons as to why he believes that it won't necessarily crash. Now, he did this in response to a lot of other YouTubers out right now that's talking about doom and gloom and how the housing market's gonna crash and all this stuff. Now, guys, I released a video last week pretty much detailing how big is this bubble going to get, because this absolutely is a bubble. And my opinion was that I don't think it's necessarily going to crash. I think it's going to be more so of a slower decline. And it seems that with this video that he released about 3-4 days ago, that he kind of feels the same way. Well, there are some things that I agreed with, majorly, and there are some things that I necessarily did not agree with. So if you haven't watched the video yet, I'm going to be giving you guys kind of a short summary. He laid out 4 points, and I'm also going to be giving you my response. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it with reason number 1 that he broke down in this video. And oh, by the way, yeah, like this video, subscribe. You guys know what to do at this point. Okay, so the first thing that he talked about was mortgage forbearance, and he referenced this number from a website called Black Knight, and Black Knight is a very popular website that details a lot of real estate data, stuff with the housing market, and a lot of YouTubers have been using this data that there's 3 million mortgages approximately currently in forbearance to kind of paint this picture of doom and gloom and this market's gonna crash. It's gonna be like 2008 all over again. Steve Carell and Ryan Gosling are gonna make another movie pretty much, and there's gonna be somebody who predicted all this and they're gonna be the next Michael Burry, right? So I get it where that's coming from. Well, he made a really good point pretty much saying that, mortgage forbearance are pretty much not as serious as it seems, because for one, it was an optional program. Anybody could have lifted their hand, in his own words, and requested forbearance. He also made the point that forbearance will not affect credit scores. Even mortgages in forbearance right now, if you look them up, will look like as if they've been caught up. Another point he made was that lenders will most likely work with potential people in foreclosure per Congress to modify their debt if they aren't able to pay, which is true, right? Congress have verbalized saying that, hey, for those individuals who are in the dangers of foreclosure, in the danger of losing their home, we will encourage the lenders to work with you to make sure that you are able to keep your home, that you won't go into foreclosure, that there won't have to be a short sale necessary. His main point, however, with the whole mortgage forbearance aspect, he believes that a vast majority of mortgages in forbearance are actually with people who has the capacity to pay. And he used this number saying that 1 to 3% out of every mortgage right now in forbearance will most likely go into foreclosures. So first and foremost, I agree. I don't actually disagree with anything that he had to say, although there are small parts where I feel like, hey, maybe this could happen, maybe that could happen. For the most part, I absolutely do agree. I actually want to add to what he says, and which is that he made the point that there's record highs in the amount of equity that the average person has in their home, but at the same time, hardly anybody is actually stripping that equity in the form of refinances, meaning that a lot of people not only have the equity because of the rising housing prices that we've seen the last 24 months, but at the same time, we're also seeing people secure their equity within their home, which is, in my opinion, very smart. So another point to kind of add to what he's saying. Now, the other end of the spectrum, if there is one, I will have to say we still, I believe, have to pay attention to serious delinquencies. And for those of you guys that don't know what serious delinquencies are, these are mortgages that are delinquent 90 days or more. I still think that's a pretty serious thing that we have to pay attention to, because at the end of the day, if you look at the median home sales price, it's gone up 15.3% year over year. If you look at the month of February, and we have to see what the month of March will tell us. But if we look at those numbers, we're seeing a 15.3% increase in appreciation. And at the same time, if you look at the average household income right now, in my opinion, there's no way that this growth in the housing market is absolutely sustainable. There's no way. Eventually, we're going to have to start seeing a slowdown, which again alludes to what I said last week's video, that I believe it's not going to be a crash. It's more so going to be a slowdown. Okay, point number 2 that he brought up, and pretty much what a lot of YouTubers are using to say that there's a crash, is that this is 2008 all over again. Well, watching Meet Kevin's video, he says this is actually the opposite of 2008 because lenders are now tighter than they were leading up to 2008, which is absolutely true, right? In 2004, 5, 6, and 7, they were doing ninja loans, right? No income, no jobs, and no assets. They were doing stated income loans all day long. And as long as you had a pulse, you were able to get a mortgage. And well, lenders nowadays have tightened up more, which is absolutely true. And there's also more government intervention. So those were kind of his points around 2008. Now, here are my thoughts around 2008, because I will actually disagree with Meet Kevin to a certain extent, right? What he's saying isn't wrong, but I will introduce another point. Because if you look at certain crashes, there's very few times in history where 2 consecutive crashes in the market happen for the same reason. So yes, Meet Kevin is absolutely right. This is not 2008. It is actually the opposite of 2008. We're not seeing any issues with investment banking playing casino, right? As he said it himself, right? That a $10 trillion housing market was transformed into a $90 trillion casino in the investment banking world. So yes, he's absolutely true. But I believe that if there is going to be a crash happening, what's going to be the cause of it is the liquidity issue happening in the banking system. And the reason why I bring that up is because recently there's been a change to the SLR. Now, if you guys don't know what an SLR is, it's what's known as the statutory liquidity ratio, which is pretty much the reserve requirement that a bank must have in order for them to leverage funds to lend to you guys, to lend to the buyers that then go into the housing market to purchase the homes. So the Fed recently tightened it, meaning that the banks now have to hold more liquidity in order for them to be operational, in order for them to do more business with individuals like you and I and Mr. and Mrs. Jones who want to buy their first house, second house, third house, you name it. So, it's not necessarily going to happen like it did with 2008, but if there is a crash, I believe we have to look at different things, such as liquidity ratios in banking systems and the SLRs. And well, if you look at what Ray Dalio has been saying, and also with his book titled Template for Understanding Big Debt Crises, I think he alludes it and breaks it down and elaborates very well at what this next crash could potentially look like. All right, moving on to point number 3, right? He gave his take on mortgage rates skyrocketing. A lot of YouTubers, again, are saying that mortgage rates are going to skyrocket. And his main points are, for one, low inventory is what kept housing prices high, not necessarily mortgage rates, which, yes, that is absolutely true. Which, by the way, one of the things that no one talks about is how Airbnb and the rise in Airbnb has been a contributing factor towards low inventory, right? I believe there's something along the lines of close to 1 million listings in the United States alone. Think about how many of those are single family houses that are now being taken out of circulation because now they're listed on Airbnb as opposed to hotel, right? If one industry loses money, like the hotel industry has been losing the last couple of years, well, one industry then in turn has to gain money, right? There's kind of a push and pull happening. So yes, no one is talking about that. Secondary, he said appreciation will balance out any decreases in value due to mortgage rates dropping. So here are my thoughts on that, right? And as brilliantly as my friend David Bruce alluded to in last week's video, rates are not determined by the 10-year Treasury note. That is actually one of the biggest myths and misconceptions that people tend to have, whether it's in media, YouTube, or even just talking amongst friends, that the 10-year Treasury is a direct correlation to mortgage rates. That is actually not true. As my friend, Mr. David Bruce said, it actually has more so to do with the mortgage-backed security. And looking here, the Fed has been buying up mortgage-backed securities, right? They bought up 700 billion mortgage-backed securities back when the first CARES package was released, and not to mention that the Fed is getting tighter on the central banking system. So we'll have to see what happens with rates, because again, I don't believe that 10-year Treasury is directly tied to the mortgage rates. So no matter what happens to the 10-year Treasury, I'm more interested in seeing what happens with the mortgage-backed securities, meaning that if the Fed stops buying mortgage-backed securities, because right now they're on a monthly rate of buying, I think the number is $120 billion worth of bonds and notes every single month, right, to sustain the market. I think once the Fed decreases that number, especially when they stop buying mortgage-backed securities, and I think the mortgage rate industry is going to take a very interesting ride. So again, let's see what happens. But again, I agree with Kevin. I don't think overall rates going up won't necessarily cause a crash. If anything, I believe that the appreciation rate, as he says, will indeed absorb any sorts of decreases in housing values due to mortgage rates. Again, it has more to do with inventory. Okay, so moving on to point number 4, which is the eviction crisis, which again, a lot of people have been, including myself, by the way, right? I'll be the first to raise my hand and say that I made videos saying that the eviction crisis, I believe, will be a big contributing factor towards a crash. Now, guys, I don't believe that it will necessarily be a huge crash like we saw in 08, but I still stand by my statement saying that I believe the eviction crisis will be a big issue moving forward. Right? So to summarize what he said with the eviction crisis, his fourth and final point, for one, he says that he believes a lot of government intervention, such as the $25 billion for rental assistance relief, and I believe the total number now is at $50 billion, will come into factor. And he also said the moratorium will most likely be extended, which I absolutely agree with. I've been saying actually for months that the Biden administration is looking to extend this moratorium till September. I believe I made videos 2 months ago saying that. So I absolutely agree. I think the eviction moratorium will continue to be extended. So my overall thought is that, yes, it will be extended to September, but the part and the question that I would ask Kevin if I had an opportunity to converse with him is that, well, the point is that all these landlords not receiving rent, most likely they'll go into forbearance, or if not, they're in forbearance already. So for me, it kind of contradicts his first point of, that 1 to 3% of all mortgages in forbearance actually going to foreclosure. Because, well, my question is, if the eviction moratorium is indeed being extended till September, well, wouldn't that 1 to 3% increase gradually over time as landlords continue to struggle financially, as tenants continue not to pay because of this eviction moratorium, being extended all the way to September? Will it not increase that number? I don't know. But if you guys have any thoughts, let me know in the comment section below, because this is a question that I genuinely do have. And I'd be curious to hear what his answer would be. So let me know in the comment section below. Now, here are my overall thoughts with this whole housing market topic debacle that's been happening on YouTube for the last 12 months, because a lot of YouTubers have been posting stuff on the housing market, including myself and also including MeetKevin. So first and foremost, mad respect to Kevin. In my opinion, I think he's actually one of the few guys that has the right to talk about this topic. And, he, a lot like myself, actually own our own real estate portfolio. We've actually invested in real estate. We've bought apartments. We've bought single family houses. We are currently landlords, and we study the real estate market. We're actual practitioners, right? We're not just a, Joe Blow realtor who has never bought a building, never bought an apartment, and yet feels the need to put out YouTube videos every single day about the housing market. So again, mad respect to him, because, he, a lot like myself, is actually a practitioner, is a real estate investing practitioner, and is in the trenches day to day. Okay, secondly, here's how I see a crash actually happening, because I don't believe that a crash similar to 08 is possible or even capable of happening now. As Ray Dalio alludes to, and as I mentioned earlier in the video, it's very rare that 2 consecutive crashes happen for the exact same reason. So here's how I see a crash actually happening. So a housing market crash, I think, could happen not directly due to supply and demand in housing directly, but actually more so, again, with liquidity issues happening with the central banking system. So here are 3 things I believe we've got to consider. So number 1, the statutory liquidity ratio has gotten tighter, meaning that the banks have less to leverage with, as we talked about earlier. Number 2, forbearance programs, although not lethal to the housing market, they can decrease the payments that the banks receive, at least for now. And last but not least, the biggest obstacle right now to buyers is actually the down payment. And surveys all across the board, including CoreLogic and Black Knight, actually alludes that the biggest issue that people have right now with purchasing houses is indeed the down payment. So banks can loosen their lending all they want, right? Because, Kevin made the great point at the end of his video that, worst case scenario, if housing prices start dropping, the banks could then loosen their financing terms to then introduce more buyers into the housing market and reset that supply and demand buyer to inventory ratio. So yes, that's absolutely true, but that doesn't solve the number 1 problem that buyers are now having entering into the housing market, which is the down payment. Because I honestly do not see a scenario where banks will take anything less than 20% when it comes to their financing. And yes, absolutely, there's FHA, there's a lot of different things going on. But if we're looking at the central banking system, because we are indeed talking about liquidity issues with the banking system, I just don't see that happening. Well, if prices stay consistent, if they stay where they are, well, down payments will stay where they are as well, because it's a percentage of what the actual purchase price is. So if prices stay up, down payments will stay up too. So again, let me know your guys' thoughts in the comment section below. Let me know what you think about my thoughts, about Kevin's video, whatever thoughts, feedbacks that you guys have. I love to hear it from you guys. And of course, as always, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and if you're feeling extra generous, please click on that notification bell and share it with your friends, right? I want to hear what your guys' friends' thoughts and comments are as well. So thank you guys again for watching this video. I'll see you guys in the next one.